Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It's your guy Boulanger. Up next in this video, we're going to be answering a huge question. Is Lamar injury prone? Does his style of play put him at risk for injury? As we get started, man, do me a quick favor, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can keep getting new content as we upload new videos. Let's go. So I sought to answer this question probably about 2 weeks ago. But every time I got ready to record, something would happen. My workload has increased. And so I just hadn't been able to really put this video out there. And so I finally got a chance today to just sit down and make sure all my information was what I wanted to communicate. And so it was. All right. And so we understand that Lamar Jackson came into the league 2018 being a Heisman Trophy winner, but had been discredited by a lot of talking heads as it pertains to sports, that he couldn't throw, he wasn't accurate, he should move to running back, or that he should move to wide receiver. All right. But Lamar Jackson stayed consistent and stayed at the quarterback position, which landed him in the 2019 MVP spot. Right. And so after he won the MVP, then it was, well, is he ever going to win a playoff game? So he did that in 2020, and then he got hurt in 2021, and then hurt again in 2022. Now the narrative around him is, well, he's injury prone, and it's because of his style of play. And so if I'm going to answer the question, my answer right off is no, he's not injury prone. And I seek to show you why. I want you to remember this. Numbers will tell a narrative that opinion never will. All right. And so everything that I say, I give you a take and assessment. A lot of times I like to show you why I say what I say, why I think the way I think. And so this is no different. Give me a second. I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and we're going to get this question answered today. All right. So I know as you guys are watching, a lot of you have your own opinions about Lamar Jackson, and that's fine. You know, some people love him, some people hate him, and a lot of people's opinions of Lamar Jackson has shifted over the last week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, last couple of years. And so I've been a Lamar Jackson fan, and I'm going to continue to ride with him. And so I just want the message to be clear and concise about Lamar Jackson. So this is what we're going to answer. Is Lamar Jackson injury prone, or does his style of play put him at risk? So I want to show you some interesting numbers. Let's go to 2021, and this is the Lamar Jackson total statistics for 2021. Lamar Jackson played in 12 games. He was 246 completions to 382 attempts. All right. And that breaks down to 64+%. All right. In that season, he threw for 16 touchdowns. He had 13 interceptions, which isn't bad, but it's not great either. Okay, especially for 12 games. And in that season, he also had 133 carries with 767 yards. That breaks down to a 5.6 average, which is certainly better than the majority of the running backs in the league, and 2 touchdowns. All right. Now, when you look at the total picture, the only thing that's missing is total passing yards, and I forgot to do that, so please forgive me. But his completion percentage looks pretty good. His yards per carry looks good. 16 to 13. Well, he still broke down to have more touchdowns to interceptions. So I think it was just okay, right? But you got to take into consideration, this was the season that where anybody who got hurt was one of the major components, right? This is the season everybody went down. Marcus Peters went down. I think a couple of the safeties went down. Majority of wide receivers went down. All of the running backs went down. So a lot of people missed time. And then also the offensive line, it was weak and raggedy around him as well. Ronnie Stanley missed basically the entire year, and Villanueva filled in for Stanley, but didn't do that great of a job, which is why they moved on from him at the end of that season. All right, but I want to show you some more specific, more narrow numbers to tell the story of if he's injury prone or not. So in 2021, here is the Baltimore Ravens Cleveland Browns game. All right, he was 20 of 32 passing. He had 166 yards, which is not good. He had 1 touchdown. He had 4 interceptions, and he was sacked twice. Now, looking at those passing numbers, that's not a good day. Let's just be very, very clear. All right. He had 17 carries, and he had 68 yards. All right. And I want to show you one more game. All right. This is the last game Lamar Jackson played in 2021. It was the Baltimore Ravens versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's look at his numbers. He was 23 of 37. He had 253 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 7 sacks. He had another 8 carries, and he had 55 yards rushing with no touchdowns. Now, this may mean nothing, but let's put it all in its proper context. Okay. In that Cleveland Browns game that I just showed you, he was sacked twice and had 17 carries, which means he had no less than 19 hits in that game. All right. Because he carried the ball with no touchdowns, which means there wasn't even a play where he got into the end zone untouched. So he had a minimum of 19 hits in that game. Okay. Although the passing numbers are poor, I'm talking about the number of hits he took. When you jump to this week, see, this is the story nobody tells about whether he's injury prone or not. If you just showed me that he got sacked 7 times in that Steelers game, and I remember this game because it was on national television, if I remember it correctly. But if you had just told me that he got sacked 7 times, I would believe that he did not leave this game. If I didn't watch it, I would believe that he didn't leave this game, right? Because what quarterback can get sacked 7 times, not just hit, but sacked 7 times, and leave that game healthy? All right. And he had 8 carries, which means even in this game, he was contacted at least another 15 times. So in 2 weeks' time, Lamar Jackson was hit more than 30 times. All right. And so when you take that into consideration, what quarterback is going to withstand that kind of pounding? You follow what I'm saying? See, over 30 hits, over 30 times being contacted for a quarterback who's roughly 215 pounds, that's a lot of pounding for a guy who has to carry a heavy workload. All right. And so what I'm pointing to is that this is the first time Lamar Jackson was really injured, but his workload was extremely heavy. When you got 25 carries in 2 weeks for a quarterback, that's a lot of carries. When you get sacked 9 times in 2 weeks, that's a lot of sacks. So is there a question of how he could have ended up injured? It's not for me. But let's look at some more numbers just in case my point ain't clear. 2022. Lamar Jackson played 12 games in this season. All right. His passing numbers are he completed 203 passes of 326 attempts. That's 62.3% completion percentage. All right. He had over 2,200 yards passing. He had 17 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Okay. His passing numbers are not elite, but they're not too bad. But when we look at another number, he was sacked 26 times. You understand? We're talking about in 12 games, he was sacked 26 times just in 12 games. You see, what that says is that the offensive line hasn't been great. It wasn't great in 2021 where he was sacked 38 times in only 12 games. And it wasn't great in 2022 when he was sacked 26 times before going down. But let's not stop at those numbers. Okay. Here is the Baltimore Ravens and Jacksonville Jaguars game. Lamar Jackson was 16 of 16 of 32, 50%. Okay, not great. He had 254 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 sack. He had 14 carries and 80 yards. I remember this game, it was pretty windy down in Jacksonville. Neither team was throwing the ball super well, but this certainly was a game that Lamar Jackson put the Baltimore Ravens up, and the defense gave up a late score, which lost them the game. But forget all of that. What I want to narrow down to, he was sacked once, 14 carries, which means he was hit 15 times. You with me? All right. I'm going to show you one more game. This is his last game of the 2022 season. It was Baltimore Ravens against the Denver Broncos. He was 3 of 4 for 11 yards. He was sacked twice, and he had 1 carry. He went out really early in this game. What I want you to see is the week before, he was contacted more than 15 times. And then all it took was 3 hits in this game for him to be hurt. Boulanger, what are you saying? What I'm saying is this. When we talk about injury prone, we have to take into consideration how a guy got hurt. Was he just running down the field and hurt his foot? Was he just running down the field and hurt his leg? Was he dropping back and towards ACL? Those things have happened. But these injuries are happening because he's being contacted. Now, we can call it style of play. Okay, we can certainly call it style of play, or we can be honest enough to say it was the offense being called and ran for him. You see, we understand that he won an MVP in the Greg Roman system in 2019. Shout out to Greg Roman. We understand he won his first playoff game under the Greg Roman system in 2020. Great. But after that 2020 season, it should have been time to move on, because that is also, I think, the same time frame where Lamar Jackson says the defenses know our plays. You see, the Baltimore Ravens stuck with Greg Roman because of continuity, maybe. But it served as a detriment to the production and longevity of their quarterback. You see, the Greg Roman system is a system that's kind of a running style, and it allows the quarterback to run the ball. See Colin Kaepernick. But the point that I'm making is, see, we call it style of play, but the honest truth is we haven't seen Lamar Jackson play in another offense in the NFL, except for his first year, where I think that was Marty Morningwig. But that wasn't an OC picked for Lamar Jackson. That was an OC that was leading Joe Flacco. I get it. Greg Roman was brought in maybe because he had some success with a dual threat quarterback. But just because Lamar Jackson was a dual threat quarterback doesn't mean he should have been limited to that type of system. Listen to the words I'm using. That type of offensive system. See, we call it style of play and put it on the quarterback, right? But why don't we call it for what it was? It was a poor system, especially after it should have expired at the end of the 2020-2021 season. All right? And so when you look at the times where he was injured in his whole career, what you're looking at is a situation where his workload was increased. Not injury prone, not style of play, but workload. In 2 weeks, he had 16 carries. In 2 weeks, he would have been contacted by defensive players 15, 16, 17, 18 times. What quarterback is going to be hit that much and stay healthy. See Andrew Luck. When they couldn't protect Andrew Luck, defenders beat him to death, causing an early retirement. So was Andrew Luck injury prone, or was Andrew Luck beat to death? Is Lamar Jackson injury prone, or has Lamar Jackson been beaten to death or beaten into injury? You see, it's the workload. You see, in both years, when you see his workload increased, see, in 2021, everybody was hurt except for Lamar. So he had to carry the whole load. In 2022, guys were in and out of the lineup, so on and so forth, except for Lamar. So he had to carry a heavier workload. And the fact of the matter is, this offense had grinded to a halt in 2022. We saw them struggle against the Carolina Panthers. We saw them struggle against Denver. Matter of fact, we saw them struggle the weeks before they played the Carolina Panthers. I believe after a bye week. There was no innovation. There was no different dynamics. There was no real schematics. And so Lamar Jackson was left, like he has been, to do it all. Which is why fans have been pushing for him to get some wide receiver help, and I think that's happening now. But that doesn't erase the fact that the last 2 seasons he got injured. So is he injury prone? Is it style of play? Or is it workload? I think it's workload. But let's not stop right here. Okay? This is 2020, 2021, 2022 rushing statistics for Lamar Jackson. In 2021, he played in 15 games. He had 159 carries for over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. In 2020, that was in 2020, excuse me. In 2021, he played in 12 games. He had 133 carries, 767 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And if you look at his averages, I mean, his production running the ball is really good, 6.3 average in 2020 and 5.8 in 2021. And then in 2022, he played in 12 games, had an additional 112 carries for 764 yards, a 6.8 clip, and he had 3 touchdowns. All right. But let me tell you the story that these numbers tell that people have not told. Okay. 159 carries in 2020, which says the offense had not evolved, which means he's carrying the ball more in 2020 than he did the year before. Okay. But when we look at 2021, he carried the ball 133 times in 12 games. Okay. Now, everything's breaking down to about a 10+ carry per game rate. Okay. 12 games, 133 carries. That's actually 11 carries per game, right? So he's even carrying the ball a little more in 2021. But I want you to remember something. In 2021, that's when they went to 17-game seasons, all right? Which means Lamar Jackson would have had 5 more games to play. That means if we stay with this average, he would have carried the ball 55 more times, probably breaking another 1,000 yards, right? But that would shatter his career high in carries. He would have been almost at 190 carries for a quarterback. See, we get excited when he rushes for 1,000 yards, but now that he's been injured a couple of years, now we want to question if he's injury prone. He would have shattered the number of carries. That's the same type of workload as a second tier running back, or a second running back in a 2-back system. And then when you drop down to 2022, he had carried the ball 112 times in 12 games, which is still a 10 carry per game rate. In the Denver Broncos game, which is the game he left, he only played in that first quarter with 1 carry. So if you add that 9 carries to that, because we're staying on average, okay, that would have put him at 121 carries. And then if you go 5 more games with the same rate, he would have been over 180 carries again, or right at 180 carries again for 1,000 yards. What I'm trying to get you guys to see is that his workload is increasing as the talent around him breaks down. Oh, you guys didn't see that. You see, his workload is increasing as the talent around him breaks down. And having the style of offense, remember, not style of play, I'm talking about the type of offense they were running that makes accentuates Lamar Jackson's workload, especially when there's less talent. You see, what I'm telling you is that his injuries came because of an increased workload. See, you can tell it's an increased workload just when you look at the numbers. When in 15 games, he had a little less than one carry less than 160. He would have certainly been at almost 190 at the same clip in 2021 when everybody was hurt. Talent broke down. In 2022, when Ronnie Stanley hadn't fully returned yet. In 2022, when J.K. Dobbins had to go back out and have a second surgery. And in 2022, when Gus Edwards wasn't 100% the entire year, and you had to use Justice Hill and Kenyon Drake, and Justice Hill I think missed a week or so, if I'm remembering correctly. In 2022, when Devin Duvernay goes to IR, in 2022 when Rashad Bateman goes to IR, in 2022 when James Prochet and Tylan Wallace both go on IR, and you have to bring back guys like Sammy Watkins, and you have to bring in a Deshaun Jackson. See, when his talent broke down, which wasn't already elite, when his talent broke down and his workload increases, that's when his injuries happened. So stop with, is he injury prone because of style of play? What it really comes down to is when his workload increased, that's when the injuries happened. So we're really talking about workload versus style of play, or injury proneness. All right. But I got a little bonus for you. Okay. This right here. All right. There we go. This right here is a quarterback's pretty well-known guy. These are his numbers. In 2020, he had a 65% completion percentage. He had 13 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. All right. In 2021, he had a 70% win percentage. Excuse me. He had a 70% win percentage. All right. 34 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, which is also a year this quarterback went to the Super Bowl. In 2022, the quarterback had 68% completion percentage. He had 35 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. All right. Now, and then his career rushing yards, he has 152 carries and he has 517 rush yards and 10 touchdowns. Does anybody know who this quarterback is? This quarterback is no other than Joe Burrow. That's who this quarterback is. You see, we all know Joe Burrow. He's in our division, right? I'm sure you've heard of him, and I'm sure you know that he's been treated like the golden child. But I wanna point out some things. Joe Burrow, 65, 70, and 68 completion percentages. Those are really good numbers, but they're not exponentially better than Lamar Jackson's completion percentage throughout his career. I showed you the 2021 and 2022 completion percentage, 64 and 62. Okay. Now, but let me add something. With that completion percentage, the Baltimore Ravens had 20 drops in 2022 and 20 drops in 2021. So would he be that far behind Joe Burrow in completion percentage? All right. Let's go over here and look at some touchdowns and interceptions. Okay. In Lamar Jackson's worst year, that I've shown you, he had 16 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. Right? Okay, well, we see Joe Burrow have a 14 interception season and a 12 interception season. Okay. That first year, 2020, is a year that Joe Burrow tore his ACL and only played, a small portion of the season. Okay. But even Joe Burrow's Super Bowl year, 34 and 14, which he was talked about in MVP conversations, and also this past year with 35 and 12 interceptions, which he was also again talked about in MVP conversations, still is not Lamar Jackson's best year at 36 and 6. Now, that may not mean anything to you, okay? But I wanted to show a real comparison, because see, sometimes we get beside ourselves as Ravens fans as we get frustrated with Lamar Jackson. But I wanted to show you that Joe Burrow's best year isn't even Lamar Jackson. It doesn't exceed Lamar Jackson's best year. And with the amount of touchdowns, it isn't close, because he would have double the touchdowns in between his best year and Lamar Jackson's. And the added bonus that Joe Burrow has from his second year, 2021, he's played with probably the best collection of wide receivers in the whole league. So he certainly should have a 70% completion percentage. He certainly should have a 68% completion percentage. The better question would be why he doesn't have even a better completion percentage. Why, with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd, why is he only 5% percentage points better from 2020 to 2021? Why did he drop from 2021 to 2022 by two percentage points? I know that's not a lot, but the point I'm making is this: when people want to lambaste Lamar Jackson for everything that he isn't, what we don't recognize is everything that he is and everything he's been asked to do as a Baltimore Raven. And all I'm trying to do is get to a place where we start identifying that as a Ravens fans and across the league. No quarterback has been asked to do more for his team than Lamar Jackson. It would be different if Lamar had an elite defense that was turning the ball over a lot and he's getting multiple chances at scoring touchdowns. It would be different if he had an elite offensive coordinator such as Josh Allen had in Buffalo, such as Jalen Hurts had in Philadelphia, such as Trey Lance or Jimmy G or Purdy had out in San Francisco. You see, if he had those opportunities, I wonder what could he do? And so my hope is that this year, if he stays a Raven, Todd Monken can give him an opportunity to quiet some of the silliness that's talked about him, right? Maybe you don't like his negotiation style, and that's fair. But we have to quit falling in love with narratives that may not be telling the whole truth, because narratives a lot of times are opinion based, and numbers sometimes tell a story that opinions never will. Do me a quick favor, man. Hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can keep getting content as we upload new videos. This is my case, man. Is he injury prone? No. And we can't say if it's style of play because we've only seen him in one offense, and that offense was limited and the schematics were all wrong. I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM, and I'm out.